The rain came down hard in the spring of 2023, washing the glass towers clean while the machines inside them kept humming. Banks moved payroll, hospitals moved records, governments moved forms, files, names, numbers. The city had learned to trust the quiet couriers of the digital age, the file transfer boxes that sat in the back office and carried secrets from one side of the wire to the other. One of those couriers wore the name MOVEit Transfer, built by Progress Software. It was supposed to be a guarded door, a place where sensitive files could pass with order and control. But somewhere in the code, under the varnish and the lock plate, there was a crack. The Clop gang found it first. Then they turned that crack into a machine. MOVEit Transfer was not some toy sitting on a forgotten shelf. It was managed file transfer software used by enterprises, universities, health systems, pension funds, contractors, and government agencies. It moved files that were too sensitive for ordinary email. Employee records, client data, benefit files, banking detail, medical material, the kind of paper that used to sit in locked cabinets behind frosted glass. That was the setup. Thousands of organizations trusted MOVEit because it offered authentication, audit logs, encryption in transit, and a web portal for upload and download. Many placed it at the edge of the network, facing the internet, because that was its job. Let partners connect, let workflows run, let business move. But an internet-facing file transfer service is a high-value window. If the frame is weak, every file behind it becomes evidence. The first cut came through a zero-day SQL injection vulnerability in MOVEit Transfer. The main vulnerability was later tracked as CVE 2023-34333-34362. Progress disclosed it on May 31, 2023. The flaw lived in the MOVEit Transfer web application and allowed an unauthenticated attacker to manipulate database queries. In plain speech, the application took input from the outside world and let that input get too close to the SQL commands inside. That is an old flaw class with an old name, SQL injection, commonly tied to CWE89, improper neutralization of special elements used in an SQL command. Clop did not stumble through one door with a crowbar. They came with automation. Their exploit traffic targeted internet-exposed MOVEit transfer servers, sending crafted HTTP requests to the web application. The vulnerable code path allowed the attacker to interact with the back-end database in ways the designers never intended. Researchers observed that the attack enabled session manipulation and administrative access paths, letting the intruder move from anonymous web requests to control over the application's file store. Once they had that control, they did not need to encrypt servers. They could steal the goods right off the loading dock. The most infamous tool found at the scene was a web shell known as MOVEit, also called Human2.aspx. It was an ASP.NET implant planted on compromised MOVEit servers. That name sounded cute, but the thing was all teeth. MOVEit could authenticate using a hard-coded password-like mechanism derived from specific request headers. It could enumerate files, user accounts, and folder detail inside MOVEit. It could download files from the system. It could also create a new administrative user in the application. The web shell blended into the Microsoft IS and ASP.NET world where MOVEit lived, a small poison pill inside a trusted web directory. Once installed, the implant acted as persistence and a theft tool. The attackers could send commands over normal web traffic using HTTPS on port 443, the same lane legitimate users drove every day. They did not need noisy lateral movement in every victim environment. In many cases, the prize was already on the MOVEit server. The platform had been built to collect sensitive files, organize them, and make them available. Clop understood the business logic better than many defenders did. Why roam the whole house when the safe is sitting in the front room? That said, the operation still had a professional rhythm. Clop had experience from earlier mass exploitation campaigns against Excellion FTA in 2020 and 2021, Fortra Go Anywhere, MFT in early 2023, and other file transfer products. Their playbook was clear. Find a zero-day or newly exposed bug in a widely deployed edge appliance. Scan the internet for victims. Exploit at scale. Deploy a lightweight web shell. Exfiltrate quickly. Then wait. The ransomware branding stayed, but the encryption did not show. No ransom note on the desktop. No locked server screen. Just a later message on a leak site saying, "We have your data. Talk before we publish." The exfiltration phase was the whole racket. Files were pulled through the compromised MOVEit application and its web shell, often over encrypted HTTPS sessions that looked like ordinary traffic unless someone knew what to hunt for. The command and control pattern was simple enough to be dangerous. HTTP requests to the implant, responses carrying file listings or file content. Cloud hosting and rotating infrastructure help hide the hands at the other end of the line. Security firms, including Mandiant, attributed the campaign to a financially motivated threat actor tied to Clop, tracked as Fin11 or TA-Fifi5 in related ecosystems, though criminal crews shift names like cheap aliases in a bad hotel. Detection failed for familiar reasons. Many organizations did not log enough application-level detail from MOVEit. Web server logs were often retained too briefly, incomplete, or not shipped to a central CM. File transfer systems were treated as utility plumbing rather than crown jewel infrastructure. Web application firewalls did not have signatures for a 0-day on day one. EDR tools could miss a quiet ASP.NET web shell if the server had limited coverage or weak tuning. And because the attackers avoided encryption and broad lateral movement, many classic ransomware alarms never rang. Progress issued emergency guidance, patches, and indicators of compromise. But the case did not end with one CVE. Investigators found more problems in the same neighborhood. CVE 2023-35036 and CVE 2023-35708, also SQL injection vulnerabilities in MOVEit Transfer, were disclosed in June 2023. That told defenders something cold and useful. When attackers find one rotten board in a web application, the whole porch needs checking. A single patch may stop one route, but a secure response means hunting for related flaw patterns, reviewing code, rotating secrets, and assuming the intruder may already be inside. The casualty list read like a ledger from a city clerk with trembling hands. More than 2,500 organizations were affected by the broader MOVEit campaign, and estimates place the number of impacted individuals above 60 million. Victims included Shell, the BBC, British Airways, Aer Lingus, the U.S. Department of Energy, several U.S. state agencies, universities, pension administrators, healthcare organizations, and professional services firms. In many cases, the direct victim was a vendor using MOVEit, while the exposed data belonged to customers, employees, or retirees who had never heard the product name before. The financial damage ran into the billions by some industry estimates when incident response, legal work, notification, credit monitoring, downtime, lawsuits, and ransom payments were counted across the victim pool. IBM and MSISoft reporting placed the campaign among the most damaging data theft waves of the decade. Lawsuits followed. Regulators asked questions. Boards asked why an obscure file transfer server could become the front page of the company's risk report. For ordinary people, the impact came as letters in the mail. Your social security number may have been involved. Your health data may have been involved. Your bank detail may have been involved. The crime scene stretched from server rooms to kitchen tables. The first lesson is that edge software is not background scenery. It is the front door. Managed file transfer platforms, VPN appliances, identity portals, and remote access tools need asset inventory, patch priority, continuous monitoring, and executive visibility. Organizations should know every internet-facing MOVEit-like system they run, who owns it, what data it holds, how it is patched, and where its logs go. Controls like web application firewalls, EDR on servers, centralized logging, file integrity monitoring, and anomaly detection for bulk download can turn a silent theft into a noisy one. Encrypt sensitive files before they land on transfer platforms when business process allows it. Apply least privilege to service accounts and admin roles. Require MFA for administrative access. Segment the system from the rest of the network. Monitor outbound traffic volume and unusual download patterns. Mature programs can map these controls to the NIST cybersecurity framework, CIS critical security controls, and zero trust principles. Secure code review, threat modeling, SAST and DAST testing, parameterized database queries, dependency review, and rapid coordinated disclosure are not luxuries. They are the locks on the night door. So that is the MOVEit file, pulled from the cabinet and laid under the yellow lamp. Clop did not win with mystery. They won with timing, automation, and a sharp eye for where the valuables gathered. The rain keeps falling on the digital city, and every bright doorway casts a shadow. If you run a door that opens to the street, watch it like a detective watches a liar, because somewhere out there, somebody is already trying the handle.